I switched over a little too fast, and everybody got to see David's David's wedding outfit on the stream.
Everyone gets to see how snazzy David is.
I mean, for not being here, he sure is snazzy. He'd be snazzier if he was here. Hello, everybody. Hello, lovely people on Twitch. Welcome to another episode of our special series, which is basically just the Ludic Society. I just haven't branded it yet. Today we are joined, I'm sure you've noticed, by three lovely guests. And we'll quickly do introductions here in a moment. But I want to just get started by having Morgan read the land acknowledgement.
I can indeed do this. So in Milwaukee, where me and Ren are, we acknowledge that we live and work on traditional Potawatomi, Ho-Chunk, and Menominee homelands along the southwest shores of Michigamme, part of North America's largest system of freshwater lakes, where the Milwaukee, Menominee, and Kinnickinnic rivers meet, and the people of Wisconsin's sovereign Anishinaabe, Ho-Chunk, Menominee, Oneida, and Mohican nations remain present.
Awesome. Thank you, Morgan. It's really appreciated. All right. So, who are we joined by? Who are these lovely people? I don't know what order we should introduce ourselves in. I hadn't thought this part through. I'm going to make Circle go first.
Okay, fine. Hello, I'm Circlehunter. I run the Deducible Wiki, and not much else.
You do other things, but I don't know if those other things are secret right now.
I do other things. I stream sometimes. I streamed Animal Crossing for 8 hours last night.
Feel free to plug your Twitch if you want to. No complaints there. Trombone, would you like to do the next introduction?
Sure. Hi, I'm Trombone Knuckles. I go by Trom mostly. I help run the Vehemence Discord server, and I also moderate for various other things like r/ARG and other small servers.
Thank you. And Mediocre.
I'm Mediocre, and I do the same thing as Trom, only better.
Quite true.
Do this. I'm sorry, I kind of lost that myself there. And as you guys know, I'm Ren. I'm a master's student at UWM. And I guess at this point I run this show. That's my job now. Morgan, toss it to you.
I am Morgan, and I am co-host to this show, I guess. I've just kind of been here, hanging out.
You are kind of the co-host at this point. I mean, you haven't missed an episode, which was never the intention, but I guess that's where we are now. I'm excited to have you here with us, Morgan, because you are an anthropologist. But you are an anthropologist, which is one thing none of us are. It's going to make this go a lot better because you can come up with interesting questions that I can't.
Oh, don't put that pressure on me.
Oh, you're getting the pressure. That's where we're going. All right. So today, what we're going to do in this special presentation is, instead of doing our normal kind of game summary thing, because David's off and David's at a wedding, we wanted to take a week away from Stockroach. We were going to ask some questions of these lovely people and talk about kind of unfiction and fan archival today. This is kind of, documents, a lot of documents actually, which is maybe not the most exciting subject matter, but it's pertinent because how the hell do you archive something that is in like 16 different media forms? It's not easy. Or make a lot of
no,
sense.
it isn't.
Well, now I'm gonna make you start again, Circle. So
you gotta give me something to go on.
I do have to give you something to go on. But I mean, we can just bounce around. Don't feel like this is an round table, so don't feel like you need me to call on everybody. This isn't a class, right? But I do think, like, if we could, God damn it. God, put your hand down. But like, generally speaking, I mean, what we're hoping to talk about today is just like how difficult it is to do this thing, what kind of archival methods are out there right now, what you guys are doing, what challenges you've run into, because you do critically different things. Wiki editing and running a large server or Reddit are not the exact same thing. Although Circle has experience modding Discord servers too, so there's also that. I do think maybe like the best thing to get started on is like probably just to jump like deep into it and just kind of say, you know, throw this at Circle. What is the most bullshit thing you've had to deal with in terms of trying to get something documented? This, you know, again, like round table off of this. So like, if you want to pick this up after I throw it at Circle, then we can keep going like that.
All right, so most bullshit. This is so unfair, but it's the extremely primitive way that the people before me documented things. There are things that I've been finding. I've been finding things recently that should have been documented ages ago.
Yeah.
There's a very big piece of lost media that absolutely should not be lost. There's no reason whatsoever for it. Just the way people did it in the past. They thought, oh, this is going to be here. And so then it wasn't there.
What is the piece of media in the Jujuzable wiki that has been like lost like that? And what archival did they actually do and what didn't they do? If you don't mind me probing further.
Actually, let me show you.
Sure. If you want me to pull it up, I can switch. I can switch over and show it to the audience too, if we need to.
All right.
Ren's got themes.
Actually, I will just share my screen.
That works too.
If I can load the tab.
While you're getting that kind of teed up, I will say, like, you know, I assume the challenges that you two face in terms of like trying to keep the Discord server as a place where people can kind of find documents and engage with documents are really different than, you know, having a dedicated web page. But have you run into anything that like Discord just doesn't want to play with, or that people just can't find? Or is the hardest thing about running a Discord server kind of archival just getting people to actually check the pins?
Yeah, getting people to document is hard.
Just in general, like motivating people to actually cover things?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I feel like it's kind of like an in the moment thing. You don't realize that this needs to be documented. You're just playing the game. And then it gets to a point where you're like, shit, we have like 6 months to document right now. And then you have to go back and it's like this whole project when you could have just been doing it along the way.
Yeah. I think I get in this like trap cognitively where I think like, oh, hey, you know, people just do this stuff. Like they pick it up and there are people who just go into each game. They're like, I'm going to start the archival process. But like, I mean, maybe I guess in more cases than not, people are just playing and they happen into that need.
Yes, absolutely. Just like, oh, I'm missing this. I better do it.
And then there's also just like the case of like, is this game gonna turn out to be something? Is it worth starting archival on this? And then once you discover it is, it's almost too late sometimes.
When you talk about it's almost too late sometimes, do like ARGs have a quote unquote like shelf life? Do they go down after a certain point, like when website domains don't get updated or something, or?
I've seen like things like that. I've seen like Twitter accounts be recycled for a different ARG, and now all of that's lost.
Okay. Yeah, I know when we were doing paranormal paranoid, we were like, wait, there's supposed to be a tweet here. Or like Ben knew there was supposed to be a tweet and it just wasn't there. So, like, okay, so is that important to the game, or did we get something, or
By the way, I'm sorry for the blip there on the stream. I totally forgot I was streaming for a moment, and I just clicked over to my DMs with Y. Incredible. This is we've never done something like this before, so if there's some kind of like slight rocks in the road, that's kind of where this is coming from. So, but yeah, I mean, so I want to get back to recycled content because I think that's really interesting. But you were going to show us something, Circle, the piece of content on the wiki that you're having trouble with.
Oh yeah, I just DM'd you the URL.
Oh, okay, let me see if I can pilot Discord in a way that lets me get to that URL without fucking everything up. I'll switch over to the ARG capture screen that I use, and then I'll just kind of fudge the window capture to Chrome.
I just figured it'd be easier that way. I'm sorry.
Actually, I can't do that because I would have to open it up. Darn. Can you actually share the screen? That might be easier.
I can do that.
Sweet.
But I can totally understand previous people not archiving well, because I did like a field school work in archaeology. Not what we're talking about, but it's like people not archaeology is inherently destructive. So if there's not notes about it, you've lost the site already. Archaeology has been done. So it's like, I hope we wrote everything down that we needed.
All right, so right here you'll see an about page for a cult, right? It's always a cult. It's always a cult. Here's the about page for the moderators. And right here is a bunch of missing information in the middle of the page. We have the top, we have the bottom, we don't have the middle. How did that happen?
Isn't that Nico's? For those of you familiar with Juiceable, isn't that Nico's icon too? Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I do remember this.
His likes, dislikes, and ambition are the things that are missing, and we're sort of disputed on the name listed here. It could be Chris. It could be Christopher. We can't decide which.
So like when you run into something like this, what is your philosophy on how to fix it? When you run into a problem where something hasn't been archived, but you want to like preserve the game experience in some way, do you just leave it until it can be filled, or is there like tentative kind of information you'll throw in? Because I know archival kind of has its own, people have ticks and places and things that they do as different archivists or different like fans.
All right, so on the wiki, we are absolutely clear that this bit of information has been lost, and this recreation of the website actually does the same thing. I can get back to the main page in a timely manner.
So for you guys, it's like here's a public alert. If you have this information, then then give it to us, essentially.
Sorry, could you repeat that for me?
So you're not going to go in and put in something and say, hey, this is tentative or something like that. You're just going to say, hey, this is missing. And also, if you have it, give it to us.
I will never autocomplete something with information that I can't confirm is correct.
Yeah, it's interesting because, like, again, I don't know if that's everybody's stance on the matter or what every archive community does, but I know that your wiki, like, obviously a lot of people, well, maybe not obviously, but a lot of people have been inspired by the kind of Juiceable wiki format and what you've done in terms of like repairing the piece and getting it up to the speed where it's at. So, you know, there's something to be said for setting those norms, I think.
I'm just happy to hear that, honestly.
I know it's the case with our other guests, because that's kind of how we all met, was through the kind of working on this kind of archival stuff on some level. Although I came in to play Paranormal Paranoids and then introduced you guys later to Circle, so the history is a little fuzzy.
Yes.
So on the subject of recycled content, because we got there and I hadn't prepped any questions about this, but I think it's really interesting. Twitter accounts getting recycled for ARGs. So the like, is it often that you guys lose content because you don't know that a kind of recycling is coming?
There you go.
In that regard?
You kind of cut out for a second for me. Could you repeat that?
Yes. So I guess I should, instead of asking a forward-facing question, just ask a more basic question. When you say Twitter accounts get recycled, what do you mean?
So it doesn't happen like all too often, but I've seen it happen at least a few times, where someone will run an ARG using a Twitter account. They'll have all their followers and they're followed, and then all of a sudden you see a tweet and it's a completely new account, but it was just formerly a different ARG that they just wiped all the content from. Start something new with followers already.
I think that a important note there is that these are usually those Twitter args that don't get massive. Um, it's just the smaller. This is my first game. I'm gonna run it on Twitter with this account, and then they recycle it for the next try again, which is valid, but it still sucks to look at it and be like, what the hell is this?
When did I
But
subscribe to
otherwise,
that? Yeah.
yeah.
I've
So
seen,
that sucks a lot.
I've seen some of that on YouTube too, actually. I think I accidentally was subscribed to some channel recently and they dumped all their content and recycled, and I was like, when did I follow this? I don't. What?
Might be the same channel.
It was the Ratstone one?
Might have
Is that
been the
the one?
Ratstone one. I'm
Yeah.
following so many fucking YouTube accounts I can't remember anymore.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like, well, and then it puts you in this kind of race you don't know that you're in to like archive all that material. Because most of these games have what, like maybe 10 active players in their like fold, 100 people watching, something like that. And so,
Sometimes.
Yeah.
So Vehemence itself is focused on the beginners, right? The first time creators and whatnot. So we do get a lot of those Twitter args that have binary and and have never created before. So as much as I would love to document every single one of these, it's nearly impossible. And I shouldn't, like, if somebody else wants to do it, yes, but I don't feel like that my efforts would be necessary if it's going to be over in 3 days and there's no players. I actually started a thing, I guess this ties into that. I actually started a thing, I started documents with templates and the basic information. I opened editing and then sent it in the channel as we opened it for these beginners to just plug it in as an attempt to get them to document as it goes. Has it been fruitful? Not really, but we're trying.
Well,
It's an attempt.
So I guess there are two things to kind of jump off of from there. One, and this is just open-ended for all of you, because I know all of you have played more than just one ARG. So when you are sitting there and like thinking, okay, well, I want to put my effort into archiving this, what makes an ARG like click for you in that way? What motivates I'm gonna actually start documenting this? How do you make that value judgment?
Interest. How invested am I in this story? Personally, I guess.
Yeah, definitely interest, but also trying to get people caught up, because some ARGs are like so far along that people feel like wary to even jump in because it's like so much to look at, and it's just like an attempt to get people caught up. Like, here's everything you need to know. Now let's jump in.
That's personal though. Like if when I start documents, I start it because I'm interested in the story. My own personal, how devoted am I to this game at this moment? And sometimes it wavers. I'll start a document and then end up not actively playing, but I'll continue on the document most of the time. Sometimes. So it just depends, I think.
But there's like a pressure once you started to finish kind of delay. I mean, I feel that too. When I was working on the Paranormal Paranoids transcripts, they have not been finished yet. And it's still in the back of my head. Like every time I get onto the Vehemence server, I'm like, I have to finish those fucking transcripts. I will say, like, there's a difference between building like a comprehensive progress doc or doing these kinds of, transcription work or whatever else, and like the stuff that you're doing, Circle, as far as like building a whole and managing a wiki, obviously, for a whole game. So I think it's worth throwing out there, what actually got you invested enough or in a position where you felt like you wanted to do the Traducible wiki in the first place?
Well, it's far enough back that I don't exactly remember what caused it. But, for as long as I remember, this, I don't know. I've had a very strong attachment to this story. I guess is the best way to put it. And when I saw that there was stuff missing and there was something I could do about it, I thought that would be cool to do. So I started little by little. And then eventually, when the last person to run the wiki left, uh, I decided to hand it over to me. I asked, they were just like, okay, here it is. So after that point, the game was over for 8 years, and I sort of didn't do much with it until much later.
Mm-hmm.
Eventually, I did come back around, clean it up, get it presentable, and I didn't really feel much pressure to do that. It just sort of happened. And then the story continued, and there was an insane amount of pressure. It was sort of whiplash there.
So the active player base is in some ways makes a huge difference, right? Like that's what I'm hearing from everybody is like if you've got a bunch of people and you know the work is going to be viewed by those people and it's going to help them, then on some level you get involved.
Yeah, and then when videos that required actual dialogue, transcripts, and whatnot, when those started coming along, I sort of left those on the back burner and had to ask other people to help because there was just so much to keep up with.
Well, yeah, and that's the other thing about wikis, right? And all of this, I guess I use Google Docs a lot when I'm doing some comprehensive progress documents. I've never seen anybody just like upload a Word document. Like usually it's all collaborative sourced tools for this stuff, which makes sense because the ARGs can't be played by single people anyway, or at least aren't supposed to be playable by like a very strict definition. So then you have to have a collaborative doc, or at least I think we at least take that for granted that like as players that like people are going to want to edit collaboratively as opposed to individually. I don't know. I mean, again, you guys, especially the Vehemence people, have seen more community interaction than I have personally. Do people keep their own documents, or is it all public for the most part?
I am a firm gripped document maker. I don't like other people editing my docs. So to work around that, I have started almost insisting that people make their own. People keep their own documents. Whatever part you want to grab, if you want to share with others, that's totally fine too. I personally don't like people touching mine, but that's because I'm selfish and it's mine. But otherwise, I think that everybody should make a document. You can never have too much information. You can definitely have too little. So if everybody's putting something down on a piece of paper, then you have a bunch of stuff.
I sort of relate to that feeling of this is mine, don't touch it.
Yeah,
it
sucks,
kind of counterproductive when you're running something that's supposed to be collaborative.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. I agree. I don't know how to explain it. Just don't touch my stuff for now. Maybe one day I'll open it. Just don't do that.
Yeah, and for documents like that, yeah, absolutely understandable. But for me, this is a wiki. I shouldn't feel like this, but I still do.
Yeah, yours is a different scenario. It's fine.
But there's always on Google Docs, there's the suggestions. So like even if it is like, oh, don't touch it, this is mine, you can still leave it up for suggestions, and there's still some form of collaboration there. Like I told people, like, hey, if you find any spelling mistakes, just put a suggestion in, and I get them all the time. I'm like, all right, perfect, thanks. Had people try to start like a timeline on there. They stopped doing it, but that would have been great. If they kept going with that, I would have approved it. But yeah, there's also something with leaving it open. I've seen at least one time, I can't remember what game it was, but like the GM got into the document and started fucking it up, like as like in character. So like that's another.
That's why I don't do that.
I'm just imagining like random Night Roach's comments on the Stock Roach document.
Oh my god, I keep waiting for him to, like, when we finally do this interview, for him to just come on in person, like in character. I mean, sorry, just like completely, like, we'll just be sitting there trying to be like, so why did you make this choice with the Night Roach? And he'll be like, I don't know what you mean, Night Roach. But who knows?
It was probably one of my sons.
It's probably one of my sons, right? Of course. How can I forget? I don't know
How do you know about Night Roach?
Get down.
But that's the thing, is like, you know, not only is the archival still part of the game field, which is interesting in its own right, but that like now we're getting into another interesting question of itself, which is you guys don't just make the documents, all of you here, except for Morgan, who, you know, is my co-host and can ask a question or pose a question anytime. I'm looking at you, Morgan. You can just jump right in. Just go for it.
I'm listening, man.
I know you're listening, but I'm going to keep messing with you the whole time. But, like, you also are curators, right? Like, what you decide, in some respects, makes an impact on how other people are playing the game or engaging with the game posthumously, in the case of Circle at this point. Although, who knows? There have been enough riffs on Janusable that there could be new content up literally any week. And John is Dead is still going, right?
Yeah, that's still happening.
Yeah, so 10 years strong, John is dead forever, or whatever. But I don't know. I'm just messing around. But
I believe it's on year 6 now.
Is it on year 6? Okay. Well, still 6 years continuously is a lot. It's at least as long as Rick and Morty, so that's. But anyway, so point is, you're also acting as curators, right? You're making choices about how other people are engaging with the game text. Is that something that, like, comes to mind when you're working on this stuff, or does it just kind of, does it ever hit you the impact that, like, a single document or, like, the Vehemence server's pins have on other people's gameplay?
I think it was a recent development that we realized our participation could possibly bring others' attention, if that makes sense. Like, if we're making a document for a game, somebody has to be like, oh, well, this must be good in some capacity for Mediocre and Trom to be doing this, or. And that sounds cocky. That sounds awful. But, like, that's what happens. that's how it goes.
That's just how it is.
I think we figured that out recently.
What game did it
within
for
the
you?
past.
Like, what did you jump into and then everybody else went, oh?
I think Ree's Rapture a little bit.
Hmm.
I feel like people were like kind of afraid to take it on because of the content, especially like initially. And I feel like by just opening the channel and beginning to engage with it, people kind of felt safer to engage with it, because even I was, it's like I found like things that proved to me that it was a game, because in the beginning it was very like scary and unclear if this was real or not. So like I can understand that people were like, I don't know about this, but then as just engagement keeps going, more people are like, oh, what's this? Why is this channel lighting up so much?
And then, but that, again, I'm gonna keep pushing things where I see them, but like Ree's Rapture, for those of you who are watching or might not be as aware of it, it is the game that we mentioned on during one of our Stockroad streams recently that I said, you know, was using like methods of profiling people as part of its game mechanics, and has an individual who's very clearly been kidnapped as part of the gameplay situation. It's very My Dad's Tapes, although without all the hamminess that happened at the end of My Dad's Tapes. That ARG really went downhill fast. Not that the, you know, ARG was going uphill to begin with, but that's, you know, web horror circa 2007 aside. So not only are you, like, is your participation in ARG a sign of value, but it's also then a sign that it is actually a game and safe to participate in, you think?
Sure.
Yeah.
I'd say yes, but that's not something that we run into often.
Okay.
This is a singular instance, I guess. It's a
Yeah.
Right.
It's
I guess
new.
I've never thought about the question. I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, I imagine like on a macro scale, it's something you'd see with somebody like Nightmind, right? Where Nightmind jumps in on a game or makes a video, and suddenly people are like, "Oh, hey, you know, I was unsure about this, but I will take the dive on this one," you know. But I'd have to go talk to Nick to get that from the horse's mouth. But that seems to be
On like a
my
much
gut.
less scale, yeah.
Yeah. Well,
As
and
admins, but
do
that's
you-
about it.
Do you see it outside of your community, or is it just interior to the Discord?
Trump's pretty much a staple in the ARG community as it is. So, Vehemence is my bubble. I don't play games outside of there. So that's my sample size, to be fair.
I'd have to like think more and pay attention. I don't really know,
Okay.
to be honest.
Trump just does. He doesn't care. He just does.
Yeah, I
I
know
guess-
that. Sorry, go ahead, Morgan.
Go ahead. Like we were talking
Yeah.
about, like finding a game and then covering the game and then that game kind of exploding or like adding. Do you think it's kind of, because from what I can tell from like ARGs, they're very community centric. Like, hey, come help me figure out what's going on with this ARG sort of thing, and just the act of someone saying, "I made a document," is enough for people to go, "Oh, other people are doing this game. I also want to enjoy this community." It's kind of like not like a dog whistle, but it's like a flag. Like, I planted a flag in this game. Come help me.
Yeah, I do think that that's an interesting point. Like, no one wants to play an ARG by themselves, right? Like, so when there are other players and there's like this little pocket of a community around the game, it does make it more enticing. I think that's true.
To push
Yeah.
things over towards towards Circle, like, I mean, I guess the question to really ask off of all this is, how often do you actually get new players or new individuals? Actually, I guess I shouldn't ask that. What I should ask is during the Awakening, like specifically during the third arc of Jedusible, how much did your wiki influence the reading of the current events that were going on?
Well, as far as people that were joining and asking questions, that's the first place we'd send them if they had more than just a simple question. If they wanted to know what was going on and they wanted to know a lot, that's where we'd send them. We had a bot set up to direct people to the wiki when they asked certain questions. It got to a point where I don't want to toot my own horn here. The last thing I want to do.
Go
I'm
for it.
canon now because of this. Jack himself made me a character because of the wiki.
That was because of the wiki, like specifically?
Yeah.
Oh my god, I had no idea.
You're just
Not
that good
because
of a
I
wiki
paid him
reader.
$100.
So, and it kind of goes back to that community aspect, like, hey, you're doing all of this work just by yourself, not by yourself, but of your own volition, for free. And it's like, hey, thank you for being a fan of my game, and let me do something for you, maybe. Do you think that your archiving on Vehemence and on Discord and stuff is aided by like the fact that Discord exists, or do you think that it's always been there with forums and other forms of communicating, or does Discord just make it easier to archive and talk as a community? Sorry, that's a weird question.
I think.
wouldn't know prior to Discord. So.
Yeah, well, that's a good point too. But I think, and this is good, I think to tie into what we talked about previously about tweets being deleted or wiped, with Discord, you can set up a bot to get the tweets sent right to the Discord, and regardless if it's deleted later or not, it's still there in the Discord. So it can aid in that.
Yeah.
So all of that
Seems
ends up
good,
getting
then.
archived by webhooks, essentially. That's kind of, I never thought about it, but that makes perfect sense. And also, goddamn, if one of those webhooks breaks, oof.
Yeah. Our Twitter bot is currently down, so yeah.
I want to interject here. Never leave those in charge, or never leave the GM in charge of those. Okay, I've had to go back and find deleted tweets. Tweets that have been deleted, and I thought the bot had archived them. But no, Jad himself went back and deleted the bot posts. Luckily,
Now,
it
was
wasn't
that
anything
because he
important.
didn't want it to be part of the game, or was it part of the game that they got deleted?
It wasn't part of the game that got deleted. Fortunately, it was pertinent information that was.
You kind of want to throw a wrench into it, be like, well, you can see it on the Twitter, but you can also find it somewhere else, so I'm going to make it harder.
Yeah.
Just
Very specifically, it was a video that had a typo in it. It was like a 30-second long video that had a typo. We all pointed out that it had a typo, and he deleted it.
Well,
that's one of
And
the
he re-uploaded it without the typo. And I wanted the video with the typo.
yeah.
Getting archived whether you like it or not.
That's fair.
It's like, but again, like that's a value judgment, right? Like, oh, I'm gonna archive everything that comes out of this, regardless of regardless of whether it actually has any impact on anything, right? Versus, I'm gonna make a curatory decision about what gets archived and what doesn't get archived. And like, I mean, that's what's interested me the most about mostly fan wikis, is that fan wikis don't work like Wikipedia does. You're not giving me a practical, like nothing but the facts definition of what the art form was. You're giving me the story replayed, you know? And that's a different kind of value and a different kind of work than something that's like strictly speaking just the media and nothing else. I wonder actually sometimes how often with CPDs, which are really doing the same thing as the wiki does, but without like the kind of ease, because it's a lot of hassle to host a wiki for every goddamn game. I wonder like how often people get into fights during these, like, in that context. I don't know how much you've seen it, Circle, or how much you've seen it, Trom, with specific ARGs, like people getting in fights on CPDs or on wikis.
I have see, this ties back into what I said earlier about being apprehensive about letting people edit things. Like, it's a wiki, it's built for people to collaborate, but there have been some people in the past who probably should not have been allowed to partake in such a collaborative effort. And I've gotten into an edit war with someone who was adamant that I was incorrect on a point. And, you know, that's fine. That's fine. You can have that opinion. But,
Sounds like there's a story there.
It's not the undercover police officer Ifrit story, right? That's different.
Yeah, that's different. That was on the actual Wikipedia page.
I still can't believe that shit.
Yeah, it's like wiki's always like kind of built on the assumption that everyone wants the best for whatever the wiki is for. And I feel like if like a GM gets a hold of it, or someone who just wants to mess with the game, it can go horribly wrong in archiving. He's like, I'm just going to put wrong information here and just see the chaos it creates. Some people just want to watch the archives burn, I guess.
And thankfully, you can reverse those at like 2 clicks. So anything that someone vandalizes, it can be gotten rid of immediately. So that's the good thing about having a wiki. Let's say you have a Google Doc that you are allowing public edits on. You don't have the opportunity to revert those changes.
You do have some options, but it's much more limited, I think, because you have to like
Yeah.
go back to the right version and such.
Yeah. Yeah, you can minorly revert. Not a lot, though.
Yeah. And kind of like talking about Google Drives versus like wikis and such, do you find that my brain is on platforms because that's what I'm researching currently. Do you find like the Google Drive system to be really conducive to archiving and like having a lot of people working on it at the same time, or do you think it kind of is the best that you have available for free sort of idea?
So personally, in Vehemence, that's like the thing is being focused on beginners. We want to have all this accessible for free or cheap, or we try to utilize open source where we can. And I think for being free and easy to use, Google Drive is definitely the best option. To get like I've been making Google Docs since late 2019, and I just like a month ago figured out formatting like properly, the whole table of contents like just properly. And it's simple, but it's also annoying, I guess. But like I'm not gonna complain about free.
Yeah, and I
Oh,
think
which
like
reminds
Google,
me. Go ahead. Cause say what you're gonna say.
Google Docs is like probably the easiest, but the one big thing I don't like about it is it's not great for large files. Like if you have like a 200-page doc, it's so slow to navigate it.
So
Absolutely.
it buckles under the weight of the size of some of these games.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, like I have not been on a dock that's been like that ridiculous. I mean, there were probably games that I've played that have had those kinds of docks, but like that's crazy. Jeez.
For sure.
Yeah, and kind of those technical limitations, but at the same time, I feel like as the internet has progressed, ARGs can get more complex because there's more tools to track all this stuff and to plug things into archives and all that kind of stuff. And do you guys? This kind of leads to another point. Hopefully, I'm not steering things away from. But do you think archiving for ARGs is kind of essential to keep the game alive so other people can play it, or do you think at some point archiving isn't necessarily like the best thing to do with your time sort of idea?
Both.
I am a firm believer that everything should be archived.
Okay.
Everything.
I kind of agree. I kind of agree. For massive games, big games, like pretty much anything that was popular, had a number of people participating, I would say, yeah, absolutely worth the archival. But I also we also deal with, those Twitter games that get too active players and don't go anywhere, or they don't have a depth of story that's worth retelling. And while I'm not saying that they're invalid for archiving, that's just personally not worth my effort. I'm not gonna go through it afterwards and archive it for any reason. If somebody else did it, I will absolutely go through it, proofread per se, but I'm not gonna start from scratch going through there. So it's both. And if nobody does it, it's just gone. It's lost.
And there can be games where having all the documented information can help during the game as well. I remember in 28 Moonhouse, the people, places, things document was like extremely helpful all the time, and the communication support. So that like the building had like a haunted like system or something like that, and it would give us these haikus with like vital information about the story and the mystery. And just to have those in one document where you can just control F and find the thing that you were looking for to like tell to this character, was like I was in that doc like all the time, just searching shit all the time and using it in the game.
And that goes back to the documents being 100 pages long and a little laggy. I've actually personally started breaking it up. Instead of having like one huge master doc, I'll have like a master document that says something and then it links to the littler ones for ease on the document system. The Moonhouse documents were a lot, though, and we should have done that, to be honest.
I wonder, like, because there are two kind of competing things. Like, I mean, I have my own thoughts about transmedia archives and what's hard to archive and what's not hard to archive, right? Like for me, the hardest thing to archive is experience, because you can't. And there's some like use, as I'm sure Morgan would point out, in like autoethnography and getting people to recount their personal experience playing a game, but otherwise you really can't touch that very well. But I mean, more on the practical, like physical and material side of transmediation, you know, there seem to be a couple competing forces here. One being that ARGs so often take place in a co-opted space, like on Twitter or on YouTube or something that wasn't designed for gameplay, or they take place in a way that where the creator wants certain things to be ephemeral and not necessarily accessible in the long run, which just leads me to like kind of ask, you know, is it the games themselves that get in the way of being archived, or is it the platforms that they're on that present the challenge, you know?
Neither. I'm not sure. It honestly depends on the player base of the game, regardless of what the game is hosted on, regardless of the story. It depends on the participants, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
What do they feel like doing? How invested are they in the story? And I absolutely agree that the live reactions of the game itself are super important, and that sucks that we can't have that in the documentation. The least, like, I can go through the Discord and be like, at this time, Trump sent 1,000 exclamation points, but that's about as far as I'm gonna get. I'm not gonna get his emotions during the thrill of it, you know. So that does suck. I agree there. Otherwise, it just depends on who's playing and how much they love it. Personally, for me.
Yeah, and I definitely think, like, in the chat, there's a few people talking about tweet archiving and talking about Twitter API, and having seen people try to research Twitter for like statistical analysis for like academic research, it's painful to do tweet archiving. But at the same time, it's like, well, you could screenshot and you could do all you want, but yeah, that feeling, or the, like, if someone comes back to an old game in like 6 years and they have all the material to go through and learn about the game and learn the story, you still get you get less of that feel because you're not going to these different websites and exploring on yourself. You have you have the archive document, but it's still
very
preserved in some
sterile.
way. Yeah.
It's a sterile archiving. It's a sterile environment. I'm currently running through Stockroach documentation, and as I'm reading chat, like, there's obviously a lot of emotions happening while these videos are being uploaded. And how do I transfer that to words? I just put something like, chat was super excited about this video today. I don't. It's very sterile and it's very boring. But that's what it's there for. It's there for people in the future, if they 10 years from now remember a game with the bug, and they can look at it and they can read it and relive them, like, think about it themselves, hopefully find somewhere to talk about it other than the archive itself. But that's kind of what I'm hoping for one day, like a library of game documentation.
Yeah, and I think,
And
oh, go ahead.
Sorry.
Oh.
Not me.
I've seen that happen.
Okay.
There have been people who have come back and seen the wiki and been like, oh, I remember that. I should get into contact with people I used to know. And people have returned. There are people that came back that I hadn't seen in the better part of a decade. And having those memories about the game, it's a good thing that does happen. So in documenting these things, even though you may not be able to relay the feelings very well, it still has that effect for those people who were there. unfortunately, you're not going to be able to document the feelings very well. But for the people who were there,
Yeah, that
they're
makes
going to feel it.
Yeah. And I think it's kind of one of the like having an ARG like library is like inherently different than saying having a video game
Oh yeah.
or like an old video game. Like the 8-bit video game will always be the 8-bit video game, and you're not really going to change it. So you can kind of go back to it and have those same feelings. That's different now with like MMOs and games being not static objects.
Games as a service. Yeah.
Games as a service, so they change over time. But like old games, you can go back to Donkey Kong Country and be like, I'm playing Donkey Kong Country. But like with ARGs, you're like the community is so ingrained in the process of doing ARG that you get that sterile sort of environment.
And well, like, on top of that, right? Like most of the time, if you're playing Donkey Kong Country and you want to go back and play Donkey Kong Country, you aren't going to get to the cart level and realize it won't load. You know, unless there's something wrong with your cartridge. But with an ARG, I mean, God, what was it that I had played where I was playing the game post fact. I don't remember what the game was called. It started with some YouTube videos, and they had a web address that they were paying for at the time, and the web address when I clicked through was dead, like it's just gone. No archive of that web address existed. So it's like, well, great, I've played through the first half of this game, and now there's nothing. And I can't go any further. Anything I would have needed would have been on this website. So it really does like that I think is like, I'm focusing a lot on like the actual physicality of the transmediation today, but that's the thing that really like sucks for this is like building you have to be able to compare a lot of different kinds of things in order to make a library of ARGs, because you never know what any game is going to use, and most people are not like Alice and Smith and going to make, you know, an executable file that contains most of the Black Watchman stuff, right? So, you know, as cool as that is, I mean, that's my stance on it anyway. It just I don't know how to imagine what an archive for a lot of ARGs would look like.
Scariest thing about digital archive, yeah.
Especially now with like Instagram, and you have stories.
Oh my God, I didn't even think about that.
That are lost. Yeah, so I try and like screen record stories when I can, but that's kind of a problem too.
Yeah.
So
I mean, it's cool. Like, it's a cool use of Instagram for your ARG. It's just for documenting.
Well, there's this idea in performance art, right? That like performance art can be ephemeral. It can exist in like this state where you can only ever see it at a single point in time in a single place, and like that obviously transfers over for us. But like that is that mentality of creators is the enemy of attempting to document anything. So I hadn't even thought about Instagram or like the stories or reels that are now popping up on most apps. But I mean, I guess if there was a Snapchat ARG, it would be incredibly difficult to have documented it as well, right?
It would be kind of interesting. Yeah. One of the other things is YouTube just recently changed all unlisted videos that were before 2017 into private.
Circle has ideas about that.
If you didn't go through and say, hey, I don't want them private, they're just forever private. So if there's just like a YouTube channel off in the nether and off in the aether that has a bunch of unlisted videos that they haven't touched in 6 years, that's gone. Circle, you can talk about that.
So prior to this year, there were, I don't know, 3 or 4 missing John is Dead videos. This year, that number skyrocketed.
Oh no.
Yeah.
That might be a bit of an exaggeration, but I do know that a lot of those videos were unlisted. And some of them were on accounts that we no longer have access to. It's extremely
Hopefully people downloaded them after that announcement.
Yeah,
it wasn't widely announced, unfortunately, because it's YouTube.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did know about it prior to when it was going to happen. There are people on top of archival over there. I'm generally not needed. I used to be needed. I'm not needed now. I'm thankful for that. But unfortunately, there were some things that slipped through. It's just the reality we're living in, where YouTube can make a decision like that and fuck everything up.
Right.
And I don't think they even like because I'm actually my thesis work is in YouTube. So like I was talking to someone who had like an insider knowledge on YouTube, and they're like, oh, they did it for security reasons. So in theory, they had the best intentions, but I don't think they realized what YouTube, the platform, was used for in certain circumstances. And I don't think a lot of the platform, like Twitter or Instagram, quite grasp all of the intricacies of what are being used for. And like ARGs are like, or like even like scavenger hunt videos a lot,
Mhm.
and like pre like 2017, they're like, oh, I remember like, oh, go help me go find my couch, and they link to a bunch of unlisted videos. It's like, okay, what are those going to be doing now? But they're so edge cased that YouTube didn't think about it. They're like, well, security wise, we need to fix the links, and we're not going to fix the other links because that would be confusing, and this is the solution we have. But it really screws up, like with Twitter and like Instagram deleting stuff, it really screws up archiving, because in the moment it seems great, and then you realize that that stuff's gone forever.
There's one of the things that I mean, obviously there's something to be said about the kind of rebel nature of building an ARG on a platform that's run by a bunch of corporate people trying to get you to make money on AdSense and then not advertising on it because it's a game. And there's a bunch of stuff we could talk about there that is kind of adjacent to all of this. But I think the thing that immediately kind of dings in my head is God, what was it? It just came through, and then I may have just lost it. The idea. My the humanity. Well, that's it for me. My brain's fried. Nah, I was gonna say something about
While
yeah,
you're
I
thinking,
can't remember. Go ahead.
going back, like the age old, this kind of just echoes or debunks the age old adage, like the internet is forever. The internet is not forever. It's very ephemeral. Like someone says link rot and digital archiving, it's just like the internet is not forever.
Well, it's interesting to use the word rot there too, because it's it has a biological undertone, which is not something we usually attribute to the web in any meaningful way. But also, I remember what I was going to say, which is that the web, what's fascinating is that early computer theory talks a lot about building systems for people to collaboratively work together and document and do these kinds of things. But then the architecture of the web as it stands is aggressively not designed for that, even places where archival is other than Wikipedia, where archival is being done, as I understand, are not super friendly. I think everybody here has had bad experiences with fandom wikis. Is that right? Yeah. What I mean, maybe it's worth recapping for the audience. What is going on with fandom?
Well,
it's not beginner friendly.
I
Too long, don't read. Yeah, it's not beginner friendly.
A big thing on my end too is that the company
going back
itself,
now with a slight amount of knowledge of wikis, it's a little easier, but it's not for first timers.
What were you gonna say, Circle?
Sorry, it sort of froze up on my end. I didn't hear you talking. I feel really bad now.
You're okay.
No, there's so much wrong with fandom as a platform. They are actively, it's a monopoly. That's what I'm going to call it. It's a monopoly on information, monetizing the work of people who don't get paid for their efforts, running intrusive ads in places where they shouldn't be. The company itself is just awful. It's awful. There are plenty of reasons I could get into on that matter alone. Be here all day.
Well, yeah, and I think that's another thing to point out. None of this work is like you guys, nobody's getting paid to run Vehemence Discord server, right? You guys are just doing it. And I know you're not getting paid to do the fucking Deducible wiki. Circle.
Yeah, and like the issue is like if you have a wiki and like you're on fandom, you have a big wiki with a sizable user base. If the mod team just decided to stop doing what they're doing and they were gone for 60 days, someone can adopt that wiki. Someone can adopt it, get you booted from your mod position, and then just trash the place, and then you have no way to recover it.
I'm gonna take some notes here so I can make stinkyben.info. No, joking.
That almost happened to me, actually.
I think you did tell me about this, but like there was a different conversation. So go ahead.
Well, essentially, I hadn't touched the Deducible wiki for maybe, I don't know. I would come to find later that it had been 59, 60 days, and someone had put in the adoption request for it, and I thwarted them on day 59. It was just a miracle.
Yeah.
But if I hadn't, that would have been the end of it.
And it kind of it sucks because a lot of this is it's fan archiving. Like there's not someone, you guys aren't paid to do archiving. So in a way it's like, well, you can't expect someone to, I don't know. It's hard to expect someone to constantly be on a wiki to work on it, to update it and stuff. Because sometimes, real life gets in the way, and fan archiving is fan archiving. You got your real life. So that's really sucks that they have that policy. It makes somewhat sense.
Makes business sense. It doesn't make
It makes
anything
business
else.
sense, but it doesn't make any sense in general.
Well, and the other thing
The
is
only decisions they make are business related.
It's nice to talk to you guys about this stuff because we have very different perspective, right? We're both embedded in the academic institution. Our view on archival is inherently different than what you guys are doing as fan archivists. I mean, I can't speak for Morgan, but I can speak for myself at least there. My work was on Wikipedia before helping at all with deducible stuff, and I didn't help that much. So what I expect when I make a doc is very different than what a fan expects when a fan makes a doc. And like I said, I think there are different logics going on there that are worth recording and talking about because the work you guys are doing is valuable and ensures that these communities actually run. Especially now, because it feels like we've moved into an era of ARG play where most ARGs are happening with Discord servers, right? And most of them are happening with Discord as a platform for communication or as a part of a hub server, like say Vehemence is. Maybe I'm misreading that, but it feels very different than it was during like the Skype era of gameplay. So now you've got, I mean, the interesting thing about Discord, right, is that Discord is constantly keeps an audit log of decisions that are made on the server. So, I mean, I guess I kind of wonder if you guys ever use the audit log, and you don't have to talk about specific circumstances, but you use the audit log in running your servers or in doing some kind of archival for the game or even just archival of the community itself.
I don't feel like the audit log helps much with games.
Okay.
It's not really auditing much of anything in terms of things like that, like chat or anything like that. Audit log can help with like who created an invite, things like that, like if you're interested in knowing that. But
so
there
really
are like
just
bots.
A moderation tool, and that is it. Okay.
Yeah, pretty much.
Man, but that really does imply that if Discord wanted to, there is infrastructure there that would allow for better channel-to-channel kind of archiving. That would be my understanding. I know you can lock a channel and shove it to the bottom of your server and be like, done. But like, can you export that data?
You can. If you look in the Davy Jones Locker channel, there's one channel called Archived Channels, I think. And it's just HTML files of like full channels, and you can download them.
That's crazy.
I
That's
can't
really
get
cool.
the images to save for people. Like I can see them on my computer, but for some reason I can't get them to you through that process.
Oh, maybe that when you download them, it's like local, and then it doesn't link up properly when you try to upload those files. That can be really awkward.
Yeah. So like you'll see like the message, but you won't see the image.
Mm.
Yeah, I guess I kind of have a question. This is kind of a general ARG question. Rin brought up an interesting point where, like Skype versus Discord, etc. And you definitely, throughout the years of the internet, it's become like a web of platforms rather than just a bunch of random websites. Have you guys seen that, like ARGs have, maybe instead of having their own website, they have Twitter accounts and YouTubes and Instagrams and things that make it a little bit more temporary than just having like a website that has a bunch of information? And does that kind of challenge archiving in a way?
I'm not really sure I understand your question.
I guess, okay, so I guess like the platformization of the internet, like most people moving from, form sites and websites and being kind of like on their own islands, being on these interconnected social media platforms. Do you see that changes the way that games operate and how you archive them? Maybe I made it better.
I don't know how.
I think me personally, I'm not really like equipped to answer that because I am a little newer. So like this, I wasn't really around
Are
to
you
see
really?
the Skype ARG thing.
I
So
feel like I
maybe
see
like
you around so often and have seen you around so often that like I just assumed you've been doing this for as long as the Yankee had.
no, say maybe like 2 years.
God, wow.
We came around during the
Came in
tail end of Aroda, so
Oh my God, really? Oh, what a thing to come in on. Oh my God, that was a disappointment. So
that was just us meeting, I guess. That's not ARGs as a whole, but shortly before that,
How long is that?
what, Aroda?
Yeah.
Aroda was
This is
whenever the fucking Harry Styles album came out.
My corner that I'm hanging out in, I've only recently branched out. Like, joining Vehemence, that was a whole new world compared to what I'm used to. I was in a small, isolated corner, so I don't know anything about anything.
2019 was the release of Harry Styles' album, Aroda.
Okay.
Which, by the way, oh my God, we should do a whole just one episode breakdown of Aroda, because like it took, what's interesting about Aroda, if I can just rant for a second, is that everybody fucking thought it was an ARG, and that it like totally was just 5 seconds of an ad campaign that was really bluntly obvious. It tricked everybody in the ARG community. And then we had a server that was playing Aroda, and all of the fucking Harry Styles stands just came into the server, and we were all like, no, it can't be Harry. It was
Wait, you were there?
Yeah, I was there. That's how I got in a fight with Infinix.
Wait, you got in a fight with her?
Yeah, I got in a fight with Infinix over the Wikipedia definition of ARGs because I think it needs to be updated. I'm very petty. Oh man.
See if she remembers that.
Oh, I hope not. I'd like to make more inroads with people, not break more. I do wonder. So none of you are. Maybe Circle is the only one who was. Actually, Circle. Were you around during Unfiction at all? I know I wasn't, but I've heard a lot about it.
Give me a time period.
Unfiction would have been like 2006.
No.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, so ARGs, if you plot them by their platform histories, really, I mean, they start on Usenet and they move over to a forum called Unfiction that generate a lot of the terms that we use today. And though this isn't the group to ask about it, I often wonder, like, how the texture of how we play ARGs would be different if Unfiction had survived. Because one of the things that we're dealing with is that it's a splinter web, right? We're constantly dealing with a bunch of different communities trying to tackle the same game, and there's some beauty to that, but there's also an issue of trying to centralize communication. And I mean, they're like, what, 4 at least large hub servers right now? There's Underground, ARG, there's Underground, there's like another ARG with an acronym after it, one. There's you guys with Vehemence, and I think there's another hub server that's got like 500 people, but I can't remember what it's called.
Is it the Kermit's Detective Agency?
Isn't Kermit's really new?
Yeah, it's pretty new.
Yeah, it might
But
be.
that has like around 600. So I was thinking maybe that could be the one.
It's probably
And
Kermit's then.
Is the other one ARG Solving Station?
Probably. Again, I'm like, I know and don't know these things at the same time. And I mean, I do wonder, do you get, since you guys also do the Reddit stuff, is Reddit, I've never actually used r/ARGs for anything. What do people actually use r/ARGs for?
Advertising.
Okay.
It's mainly used for creating a fake account and advertising your ARG on that fake account, claiming that you found it. I don't have a problem with that personally. I don't care. But that's how it's used a lot.
Yeah, and you always have to find, like, we're talking about archiving today and like that kind of stuff, but there's always has to be a starting point. How do you find the ARGs?
Right, the trailhead, of
some
course.
some random guy goes, "Hey, I found this random Twitter account that I have no association with. Please go look at it."
But it's the thing that nobody is an expert at. Like, I've never met anybody who said, yeah, I found like 15 trailheads, you know? Like, that just doesn't happen, because you happen into them more often than not. So, you know, I wish there was an expert I could talk to and say, yes, you are the expert at finding these things. What does a trailhead look like? What's a good trailhead? What's a bad trailhead? But usually the critics are the ones who are making those decisions, not the people who are actually finding them. Like, critics of major repute get tips, you know? That's why we're covering Stockroach, is because I use the lovely people in this call right now as my tipsters. You guys send me lovely tips, and then we cover them. We're doing Juducible because tip. Which the audience can do as well. Anybody watching, if you guys have stuff you want us to cover, you can tell me about it and I'll cover it.
Eventually.
Give
the caveat of eventually.
But it's interesting that the norm, so you would say the norm of the community on Reddit is you pretend to be someone else when you post your ARG.
Yeah, I mean, that's part of it. There's also people that will ask questions, like as a creator. Hey, I'm making an ARG, but I have this issue. What do you guys think? Or people trying to assemble a team. Hey, I'm trying to make an ARG. Would somebody like to join and make it with me? There are various ways. I was just like half joking. It is very common, but there are other ways the sub is used.
Okay.
It's kind of interesting that Sorry,
no, go
that
ahead.
Reddit is used in that way, and I feel like then like other subreddits are probably made as ARGs are built. Like, let's make a subreddit for this ARG and let's make a subreddit for that ARG. Do you think like subreddits can play an important role in the archiving process, because it becomes kind of kind of similar to a Discord hub where they're like trying to figure out things or clues are posted, etc.?
I personally don't find a subreddit as helpful, or like, I guess I just don't enjoy it for a game personally as much. I think because it's not like live chatting. I think that's what Discord is awesome for, is just the live chatting. But I do think there's some worth in like archiving, because you can just like make a post of like, hey, this piece of information was found. Here it is forever.
Okay.
Yeah, there is some sense that Reddit's not going anywhere anytime soon.
I mean, Reddit could just delete the subreddit, but you know.
Now, I understand where you're coming from with the whole, I don't know, instant messaging type thing, but I don't know, where I come from, from my little corner of the ARG sphere was my first experience with it was a forum. So that's honestly what I wish we could go back to for ARGs is forums. That was a good time. The suspense, waiting, love that.
Waiting for someone else to tell you you're wrong.
The longer I can go thinking I'm right,
Yes,
I'll take it.
Well, I think another advantage is that things are less cluttered. Like things don't get buried as easily as in Discord.
That's
I think
true.
that Discord does add the challenge of archiving because things get buried really quickly in a chat.
Yes, they do.
Yeah, I can imagine, especially if it's like an active community, it just kind of ticks away, and you're like, wait, come back.
Searching is fine though. Just
Yeah.
one word, search it.
Yes, but if you know what you're looking for.
At the
That's
height of
also
awakening.
true.
Oh, sorry.
I think that the Nope, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. At the height of awakening, there were hundreds of people talking at a time at any time something updated. So it was extremely hard to in real time archive all the small things that people were finding. It really was. I feel like it affected my ability to actually participate because it was my responsibility to be the archive guy.
Mm-hmm.
So, that's something that I was feeling then. Looking back on it, I don't know how I did it.
I don't know how you did it either. Like every week you'd say you were super burned out. Oh. Anyway, Mediocre, you had something you wanted to add in.
It was kind of just saying that relying on the webhooks for archival reasons is really good. Going back and being able to see, like I've recently started making spreadsheets for social media posts, and having the content there, like maybe the image is gone, but having the content there to, like what the tweet says, just copying, pasting that over, and then being like, tweet since deleted. I think that's been very helpful instead of going through the Twitter itself and then realizing that replies are gone or whatever is gone.
Yeah. Well, and I actually ran into an issue with our Discord server for streaming where my webhooks just died because the trial I was on expired, and I didn't realize that it was something I needed to pay for. And I haven't fixed it yet. Sorry, Serious Play. But that sort of stuff bothers me too. It just seems like, for me at least, every time I think I've found a solution to a problem in the space of keeping things like centered and organized, the web finds its own way to fuck it up via some institutional pressure.
It all goes back to capitalism.
Yeah, I mean that's unfortunately how I feel very often about it. That if God damn it, everything is here so somebody will pay for it. Maybe that's why I like Wikipedia so much.
Yeah, real quick, I just want to shout out in chat Zed and Shy. They were moderators right alongside me for the ride in Awakening. They were helping archive all this shit. They took a lot. They took a lot of that responsibility on themselves too. So.
But we appreciate.
It's kind of.
I can't claim credit. I can't claim sole credit. I had help. Yeah. I want to make that clear.
Well, the reason you're here and not them is because I know you. I would have had everybody on if I could ask everybody.
I feel like archiving kind of is similar to like dungeon mastering, where you sign up for something that you're like, this is fun, and then you realize it's a lot of work, but you're like, I like the work, right? This is okay, and then you're stuck there forever. You're forever known as the person who archives, or you're forever the DM, and you're never going to be a player ever again.
I'm okay.
Mediocre sitting there like nodding, like, oh god.
Yeah, that's pretty much where I'm at this current moment, and I've only done serious documenting on Stockroach. I've accepted my fate, though.
Yeah.
It's an interesting challenge, and you know, it's something like, I mean, I am very pro at some point getting in a place at an institution where I can, you know, get money and grants from that institution to try and make some kind of, you know, ARG archive that's open source and viewable via, say, UWM or whatever else, right? Because to me, that's how we get from, you know, just the fans doing all this labor to the fan labor being cached somewhere that you know isn't going to go anywhere unless the university goes under, you know?
Yeah.
That's a little bit more protection, even if it is, you're still embedded in this shitty institution we call academia. I don't think that's a really good solution on my part. On you know, I don't think it fixes all the problems that we're facing. And like, I guess like the last kind of thing I want to ask before I just have you guys plug whatever you want to plug, and then we can kind of call it a day, is like, where do you see this going? Like, where in the future of Discord ARGs, or in the future of like wikis, where do you see archival progressing? Where do you see players moving to try and make this stuff better or more accessible or more usable for new other players?
Well, it's a tricky question to answer because the most readily available
I hope
resource.
everybody does it. It picks up.
We're out of sync again.
Go for it, Circle.
The most readily available resource, if you're going to try to make a wiki, is unfortunately fandom. So really, it's a tricky question for me to answer because I just hope that it progresses at all. I hope there are more people that get an interest in archiving these things because they need to be archived. There are always people asking questions. There need to be people who can answer those questions. That's basically what it comes down to. And if you have to use fandom, okay, I get it. Do it. Leave eventually,
Mediocre, since you had something to say as well.
The same, basically. I hope more people want to document anything. Contribute. That's it.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like what we need, like desperately, is an open access fan wiki space. You know, something that's not fandom, that is, you know, non-profit, but is solely there like Wikipedia, but to host fan labor. And I mean, the amount of server space you would need to do that would be ridiculous, but like, it would be a cool thing to be able to pull off.
Maybe like a start.
Yeah. I could start with one wiki, right? Like, that's how it all begins.
How it all begins.
Trom, did you want to add anything to the last question?
No, nothing beyond what's already been said.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, thank you guys for coming in today and having this conversation. I know this wasn't the most professional thing that we could have done. I kind of wanted to feel it out and see how things were going to go, and I'd really like to have you guys back on at some point as well, if you enjoyed this, of course. Because while this was just a general conversation about wikis and archival and that sort of stuff, all of you guys have very specific niches and specialties that I'd love to like have conversations with you about in general. You know,
or just like play some ARGs with you guys.
Yeah. Or have you on to help us diagnose stockroach stuff or whatever else, right?
Trom being in chat, being like, "You missed that. Go back." Oh, okay. You had spoken. Go back.
Yes. Yeah, we'll talk more about that once the show's over because there's technical things, but I don't want to start spitting out our stuff about policies while we're on air. Thing is, I should say, I do think there's a lot of, like, Vehemence is doing some really good work. I stand by that. I think it is the most welcoming and effective ARG hub that I've been a part of. And, like, so of course, like, I want to talk to you guys more about what it takes to run Vehemence. I think, like, setting that up would be really cool at some point. Circle, you already know we're gonna, we're gonna do this whole thing again, but for a different project, because goddamn if I don't respect your opinion on all of this shit, and find it really, really insightful. So, anything you guys want to plug before we jump off? No?
It's been plugged so much already.
Join Vehemence Discord. Like,
That's air horns.
so
Do you have a custom URL yet?
We do.
They are changing the boosting levels, so people can get more vanity links and such.
Well, that's nice. The boosting thing is cool. I wonder how much it actually. I don't know. You know, we can talk about Discord some other time. Thank you all for joining me and Morgan for this lovely little roundtable discussion where we ask questions and get interesting feedback from fans who are doing amazing, amazing work. I mean, I know that us saying this is valuable and we think it's cool is not like compensation, but for what it's worth, this is valuable and we think it's cool, and it sucks that, you know, you do all this labor for shit and it doesn't in some way allow you to pay the bills and you know, maybe one day you guys will start Patreons for this sort of stuff. I would join a Vehemence Patreon, that's for sure. But that's, you know, that's neither here nor there. Thank you. I'm gonna cut to our bumper and we'll talk after the stream. Bye everybody. Bye audience. Thank you for joining us.
Bye. Thanks for having us.
Bye.